that. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see my screen right here. If not, feel free to chime in, and we can ask questions at any time. This is a real relaxed format. I can't see the chat as I'm presenting, so if you have a question and I'm not responding, just ask me. Anyway, so this is DoubleTap, aka Matt Parker, and we're here to talk about the Pacific Crest Trail Water Report for 2016. And I'm sharing my entire screen, so I'm going to be bouncing around a bunch, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask at any time. So, as a matter of fact, I already have my first edit. So what I'm going to do after we have this conversation is I will upload the recording to the PCT Water Report page. All the updates are available at www.pctwater.com. I imagine most of you guys have already gone there, and I'll go to the screen and the website and show you a little bit more about how it works, but it's pretty straightforward. But the whole idea is pretty straightforward. Basically, we take reports that come straight off the trail from you guys. So when you're out there and you're looking at your half-mile maps and you come across a water source, tell us what you saw. Is it running? Is it not? Is it dry? Are there any other special directions to find the water? That would be great. And I'll describe to you how to send that in to us. We have it available in HTML or PDF file format so that you can download right onto your phone. Although I highly recommend that you always carry a hard copy with you when you come into town. Usually there's a library, or sometimes there's a trail angel who will have a printer available. And it's always good to have a hard copy with you just in case your electronics fail, or I've known some hikers who have actually gotten into a spring with their phones in their pocket, didn't realize it, and lost all their maps and their water reports. So, I'm hearing a little bit of background noise. Can you guys please mute all your mics? That'd be great, unless you're speaking, obviously. So basically, it's updated several times a day during peak hiking season, and this is important for the southbounders, because often southbounders think we don't update it in late hiking season, but we do. So between April and November, both Halfmile and myself will be looking at the inputs daily, multiple times, and trying to get it up on the report as fast as possible so you guys have the most updated information. And there are 3 ways to send information to the water report. You can email at water@pctwater.com. You can text us at this number below, or also call us. So any of those 3 ways and we'll get it. We do ask that you please try to use one of these 3 avenues. I know I'm friends with many of you guys on Facebook, and some of you guys have my personal email address, and that's great, but send the updates to one of these 3 methods. That way it's ensured that either myself or Halfmile gets the updates as fast as possible, and we get it up as soon as possible, because sometimes I'm traveling for work or he's traveling, and we're not always looking at it at the same time. I might get to it before he does, or vice versa. So a couple of points here before I get right into the meat of it. Just some history. The water report actually wasn't started by myself or Halfmile. It was started by a guy named As a Bat, which stands for Blind as a Bat. And unfortunately, he passed away in 2012, actually on the trail in Oregon, just from natural causes. And so in 2013, Halfmile decided to take on the water report. And then in 2014, when I thru hiked and Halfmile thru hiked, we met each other. We started talking and offered my help, and he took me up on that last year. We have expanded the coverage, as you can see here. Initially, it was only in Southern California, but we added NorCal, Oregon, because there are some pretty long stretches of no water in Southern Oregon. And last year we added Washington, primarily because it was a very dry year last year. Do you really need to have it this year with the winter we're having? Probably not, but since it's already up there, we'll probably just keep it up there. We figure the more information, the better. It doesn't hurt anyone. We did reformat it last year to make it easier. So when you come into Idlewild, for example, actually, you know what? I'll just show you. It's probably a little easier that way. This is the Pacific Crest Trail Water Report website. So you come here, and you can see there are 2 sections. There's the HTML section or the PDF section. So if you click on this first link here, Part 1, Campo to Idlewild, you'll see the updates. And we specifically chose Campo to Idlewild because typically people go into Idlewild, they take a 0. There's a printer at the library, and you can print it out. That way you're not carrying extra stuff, because the next place will probably be Acton or the Softleys, which also has a printer. So we reformatted it that way. A note about water caches. You guys have probably heard multiple times, never rely on water caches. They're the great source, obviously, but with the number of hikers increasing on the trail with every passing year, it's harder and harder to maintain these. And actually, there's only one that we feel 100% confident that it will always be full, and that's the Third Gate Water Cache in California, Section A. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get closer to that. And then Halfmile actually has a PCT Water Twitter feed if you guys want to sign up for that, which can be pretty helpful at times. Just want to check here to see if there's any questions. No? Okay. So a note about the PCTHYOH app. Many of you may have used this in the past, and we just want to let people know that unfortunately the developer, Roughwork, he passed away in 2014. And as far as we know, it's no longer supported. So if you use it at your own peril. We don't know if it's linked to the water report anymore. It was automatically linked for Southern California, but it definitely will not have Northern California, Oregon, and Washington. If any of you guys know someone who's actually maintaining this now, we'd love to talk to them, but as far as we know, no one is. So I would use it at your own peril. So going back to the actual water report, so it's pretty straightforward, as you can see here. So this is Section A, and you know, we put some general notes in yellow just to kind of catch your attention, especially if there's a safety issue. Up here in the right-hand corner, you can see when we last updated it, so it gives you an idea, you know, if we're actually doing our jobs or not, and how frequent it is being updated and how recent it is. But if you go down to each of the individual lines here, like the very first one that you're going to run into is 1.2 miles away from the Mexico border. And the way it's set up is the first column is the map page, and these are all referenced to Halfmile's 2016 PCT maps. So page A1, mile 1.2, here's his waypoint. It's the juvenile ranch facility. As of March 6th, Rustic sent in an update that the water is off. So, you know, pretty straightforward. We relay to acknowledge the people who are sending in the reports. So, you know, let us know your trail name. If you don't have a trail name and you want to use your full name, typically we want to put your first name there just to protect your anonymity. Okay. So, and we sometimes we'll put comments, you know, beneath, and if there's special directions to get to the water. Sometimes we'll have more than one comment or more than one update to kind of give you an idea of the trend that you're seeing. And this comes into play more in Section F of California, which I'll talk about here in a second. And a couple things that we ask for, it makes it really easy for us, is when you send in an update, you know, please let us know the mileage point, reference to Halfmile's 2016 maps, the date you were there, and just the condition. And that just gives us an idea of you know, what to put the date in this column, because sometimes we get a long email and it's just from one date, yet it's obvious the person didn't hit 100 miles in one day. So we really like to know the exact date that you were there if possible. Okay, so that's that. Moving on to water caches. As always, they should not be relied upon. They're always great when you come upon them and there's water there. I've used them myself. But when you're at a water source and you're looking at your maps and you're trying to plan out how much water to use, you can't rely that water is going to be there. Even if someone ahead of you for some unknown reason tells you, hey, it's you know, 48 hours ago it was great, it's there. Unless it's a Third Gate water cache, you have to err on the side of caution, because if you plan to use water at that water cache and you're out and you get there and there's no water, you know, you're in trouble. And especially with the increased number of hikers, which I alluded to earlier, this is going to be more of an issue. There are several water caches that were maintained in past years but are no longer maintained. The Scissors Crossing in Section A, California, I think it's at mile 71, is not maintained anymore. And there are two pretty important water caches in Section F, California, that are no longer maintained. However, I've been contacted by a gentleman for one of the caches, and he says he'll be updating it about once a week in May, but once again, you don't know if you're going to have water once you get there. So speaking of the Third Gate water cache, you know, just to put some numbers behind it, and Halfmile put this slide together. has a lot of really great data. As you can see, here's the years here, and the gallons of use by a certain date. And you can see the numbers are increasing with every year. Last year, over 1,100 gallons of water as opposed to almost 900 the year before. They did stock it up in February with about 62 gallons, and the last reports I've gotten have all been very positive about it, and it's a very reliable cache. It's right off the trail at mile 91.2, and the only thing we'd like to let people know about is please no campfires. They've had some issues with that in the past, and be respectful of that rule. So just to give you an idea of what some of these water sources look like, they're not always pretty, as some of you already know from pass-through hikes or other hiking. They can be in all kinds of forms, as you can see here. We just kind of gave you a few pictures of what they look like. But the key point here is always treat the water, especially if it's coming from a spring, because you don't know where that water is coming from. Just because you have water coming out of this pipe up here at Lower Morris Meadow at mile 39, you don't know where it's been sitting. Barrel Spring is another good example of that. It looks like it's coming out clean, but I think it comes from a trough above it, and there's been dead rats in there in the past and stuff like that. So even though it looks clean, please treat the water. The last thing you want to do is end your hike prematurely because of Giardia or whatever else you could get from drinking tainted water. Oh, here's Barrel Spring right here. That's actually what I was referring to. So I have no idea what that is, but I don't want to drink it without treating it. Okay, so just to get into some of the longer stretches so you can have it in the back of your mind when you're out there, right off the bat you're hit with a 19-20 mile stretch to Lake Morena. Carry plenty of water. There's sometimes a natural water source at Hauser Canyon at mile 15, but it's rare. I've hiked in 2012 and 2014, and in 2012 it was barely running. 2014 it was bone dry. But we see a lot of people who try to go for broke on the first day to get to Lake Morena so they can have that water. And that's a tough first day unless you're in really good shape and you've really been out there hiking every day with a full pack on. And it's going to be hot, especially the time of year you guys are starting. So I always tell people, don't feel like you have to get there on the first day. You can get down to Hauser Creek, or there's a campsite there, although it fills up really quickly. Or you can hike up, which is about 1,000 feet up from Hauser Creek, and dry camp somewhere a couple miles short of Lake Morena. But I've seen a lot of people in both years who just go for broke on the first day, and then they get to Lake Morena and they're already shot. They're exhausted, and they can't go on. So just a word of caution. The next big stretch is in California Section B. This is coming down from Mount San Jacinto. It's almost like 8,000 feet down, and it's a 20-mile stretch, and it's quite demotivating at times because you can actually see the water fountain below you, but the switchbacks are so gradual, it just takes forever to get to it. So just keep in mind it's 20 miles, but at least it's downhill if you're a northbounder. If you're a southbounder, that's tough because it's going to be about 8,000 feet of up and 20 miles of no water. Third stretch here is in Section D, and to me this is actually one of the harder parts of the trail just because it's got a big climb, 6,000 feet. 23 miles to a reliable source, being Guffey Spring. So I've broken that up into 2 days, in both years I hiked. I mean, everyone's different and everyone can do, certain miles a day. But to try and do that in 1 day that'd be pretty intense. Mile 518 in Section E, Hikertown to Tyler Horse Canyon. This is actually the Mojave Desert that you hear about, the infamous Mojave Desert. It's not as bad as people say it is, but it is dry and it can get very hot. The good news here is it's fairly flat. You're on the aqueduct or you're next to it for a while, then you're actually walking on top of it, which is kind of a nice break from things, and I actually kind of enjoy this section. Just be aware, you got 24 miles of no water. Section F, I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth on this in a few slides later, so I'm going to skip over this section for now because there's many dry stretches in Section F. It's the most challenging section, in my opinion, for water management on the entire trail. And one of the misconceptions of the trail is once you get to the Sierra, you don't have to worry about water anymore. That's not quite the case. I mean, you got plenty of water in the Sierra, but once you get to Northern Cal, you hit the Hat Creek Rim section, which is a 29-mile waterless section, and it's extremely hot and exposed. You're hitting Northern California typically in the July time frame. It's a little lower elevation, and it can be pretty intense. Yogi actually has a lot of good notes in her books about you know, how to tackle that. Many people will leave from Old Station late in the afternoon, hike till like midnight, you know, cowboy camp, and then get up early and try to get to Highway 299 to hitch into Bernie before it gets too hot. Trying to do that all in the day in one stretch, that'd be pretty miserable in my opinion. So keep that in mind. And then last but not least, in Southern Oregon, you do have a 26-mile waterless stretch from Crater Lake to Thielsen Creek. Luckily, it's a little up, not so much, just mostly in the Crater Lake area, and then it's, you know, flattish to uppish to Thielsen Creek, which is a pretty reliable source. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about Section A and Section F, because to me, I think those are the two most challenging sections. So I mentioned this earlier. I start off with at least 5 to 6 liters of water. Everyone's different, and there's no formula for this. You just kind of have to know how your body reacts to hiking, and especially hiking in the heat. Of course, download the water report before you leave. Many of you are probably staying at San Diego Trail Angels, like Scout and Frodo's, before leaving. So, you know, try and print it out before you hit the trail. Have that hard copy, and always download it onto your phone. Anytime I got cell phone coverage anywhere on the trail, which is actually quite a lot in the high desert portion, which surprised me, I would always download the report and get it onto my phone so it was at least cached. Some people ask about carriers. I had AT&T when I hiked, and it was okay, but it seemed like the people who had Verizon had a lot more coverage. So to highlight the water sources in Section A, of course, you see that the first stretch is, you know, mile 20 Lake Marina. There's a couple of ones in between, and I just recommend to, you know, check the water report as often as possible to see if they're running or not. But mile 68 is an important one. That's Rodriguez Spur Fire Tank. And the reason I highlight this is that last year we got reports that it's been damaged a bit, and actually I just got a report the other day that it's still kind of leaking. There's still water there, but it's one of those things that we're going to have to keep a close eye on. So I'd really appreciate any updates that people can send in for that one, because that'll really help hikers behind you. Mile 77, the Scissors Crossing water cache is no longer maintained, but there are options. You can hitch into Julian. There's a highway right there, and, you know, depending, you know, how hitching goes, it can take anywhere from 30 seconds to an hour, sometimes more to get it right. It just depends. But there's a lot of traffic on that highway. So you can go west into Julian, which is a pretty nice town, or you can hike 4 miles to the Stagecoach Trails RV Park. And I've never been there myself, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. Of course, mile 91 is a third gate water cache. Very confident that will be filled when you go by, but still send me updates if you can. And then the rest here, I'm not going to go through each of them. You can kind of just read at your own leisure. Okay, so Section F, this is the challenging one. So the slide here just kind of gives you a map to show you the distances between some of these water sources. The important ones are Golden Oak Spring right here. 602 is Robinbird Spring, Landers Camp at 609, Willow Spring at 620, and then Highway 178 at the end of Section F, Walker Pass. So why is it challenging? For a couple of reasons. So at Highway 58 in Tehachapi, a lot of people don't start there. What happens is you get to the end of Section E, and I'll just pull up a map because that's a better way to describe it. So this is the last page of Halfmile Section E map. And a lot of people get to mile 558, which is Tehachapi Willow Springs Road, and you hitch into Tehachapi from there. There's a lot of traffic on the road, and it's just a good opportunity. Well, you know, for the purists, you want to come back and start from mile 558. Some people will just skip it and get a ride out to Highway 58 here at mile 556. But if you want to do it, you're going to be adding another 8 miles of a waterless stretch. And the reason I bring that up is because you could potentially have a 35-mile hike with no water to Robin Bird Spring, and that's if you start back there. And the reason I mention this is because Golden Oak Spring has had some issues in the past at mile 583. This is the first water source on trail in Section F. I think so far it's been pretty good this year, but there was some damage from the cows in 2014. What they did to the spring, I don't know, but apparently they don't like the spring, and they damaged it. And it was out of commission for a while. Some really great people went up there, and they fixed it last year, and I've gotten a lot of good reports coming from it, but just check the water report and, make sure that it's running before you rely on it. If it's not, the first reliable source is mile 602 at Robin Bird Spring. I'm hearing some background noise. Can you guys please mute all your phones, please? Okay, thank you. So at 602, a very reliable spring, but I've actually seen cattle drinking out of the spring, so make sure you treat the water. Make sure you treat all the water sources in Section F and G. As a matter of fact, my approach is for all of Southern California, I treat every water source. It's only when I get to the Sierras, when I have a nice waterfall coming down from me with no trails above, that I'll just drink it straight from the waterfall. Mile 609, this is probably the nicest stretch of Section F because it's only 7 miles of no water. But this is a very reliable spring. As a matter of fact, it's the spring in the background, as you see here. And it's a really big campground, so it's a perfect spot to stay the night. But here's where you're faced with probably the biggest water decision on the trail, in my opinion. You could have a 42-mile waterless stretch from this point between 609 Landers Campground to Highway 178. Now, the reason for that is because at mile 616 Kelso Valley Road, there was a cache there in the past, but it's not being maintained. Sometimes people leave stuff, sometimes they don't. Both in 2012 and 2014 when I hiked, it was bone dry. It was just full of empty water bottles, so I would not rely on it. There is a spring at mile 620 called Willow Spring that a lot of people go to. The only catch is that it's a 3.2-mile round trip off the PCT. And you'll see this on Halfmile's maps. He highlights it very well so you can see where to go. Mile 631, Bird Spring Pass, this was also a cache that has been maintained in the past, and a gentleman contacted me this year and said, hey, look, I'm going to start going up there once a week in May and putting a bunch of water up there. But you can't count on it given the number of people that are going through right now. So if you look at it from a worst-case scenario, unless you want to go off-trail, at Willow Spring, you have a 42-mile waterless stretch. And even then, sometimes Willow Spring hasn't been reliable. So it could get pretty dicey. What my approach to this, at least in 2014, was I walked out of Landers Campground with 7 liters of water on my back, which there's no other way to say it. It sucked. But I knew I could get 42 miles on 7 liters. And then at the end of mile 651 at Walker Pass Campground, usually there's a cache there, but you know the rules on that. There's a water trough on Highway 178 that is fairly reliable from what I've heard. I've never used it myself, but I hear it's really reliable. Okay. I know I'm throwing a lot of data at you guys, so feel free to ask any questions. So going on to snow. It's still pretty early. Well, I guess I shouldn't say pretty early, but we still have winter to go. I personally live in the Bay Area, California. We've had 4 straight years of drought. This winter has not been a drought winter. It's been just above average, and as a matter of fact, we're getting pounded by storms this weekend. So Sierra snow still kind of remains to be seen, and I have a slide on that later. But one thing that people don't realize is you're going to run into snow in Southern California too. You can run into it at Mount Laguna, just 42 miles from the Mexico border. You can definitely run into a Mount San Jacinto right here at the end of Section B, and this is the infamous Fuller Ridge that you guys have probably heard about. The good news there is Idlewild, which is my favorite trail town, has an Outfitters. And one year when I was there, we got hit by a snowstorm, and I was able to go to the Outfitter and ask him, hey, what do you think? What are the conditions? Do I need to, get microspikes here or whatever? And fortunately, I didn't need to, but that is an option if you get hit by a pretty good, storm while you're there. Big Bear can have snow, although there's a big detour in that section this year, and we'll talk about that later on. And then Mount Baden-Powell, which is just over 9,000 feet, I believe that can have snow too in Section D up here. So you're going to hit snow way before the Sierra. And there's plenty of winter left. So it's really hard to tell when's the optimal date to enter the Sierra right now. And just to kind of give you some data behind this, Halfmile put this together. And you could see, the months here and the years, total inches. So we're already at 13.4 inches if you ever average these out, whereas last year we were at 14.1 total. And we still have another month and a half of winter to go. And the way things are going, we're going to have an above average winter. And just a little bit about snow, to give you the graphical representation, you could see 2013 and 14, 2014-15 season are the bottom lines, and then right now, the blue line. So you can see South, Central, and North California all are way above the last 2 years. So there's just something to kind of, keep in mind when you're planning your entry date into Kennedy Meadows at mile 707, I believe it is, or 702. A quick note about PCT closures. So Halfmile's done a really good job of putting detours in his maps. I'm sure you guys are familiar with his website. So here it is right here at www.pctmap.net. You can go into PCT maps here and download all of his section maps. And then here's the detour maps that has the Mountain Fire unofficial detour in Section B. This is the one around Mount San Jacinto that's actually been closed down for a couple years now. The Endangered Species Detour map in Section D, actually Section D has many detours in it, and if you look at his Section D maps, he does a really good job of navigating you around the closures and the detours. And then the Powerhouse Fire detours in Section E, and that was from a fire 2 years ago. It's they still have the trail closed, and last year it was a bigger portion. They've narrowed it down, so it's not as long, but it's still closed for a certain portion. And I would just put these maps in your resupply boxes, and all the other detours are in his maps here. Okay. Just a few final notes here. The Warner Springs Community Center. This is in California Section A at mile 109. So every year this gets more and more expansive, and they're offering more and more services to the hikers. It's a really good spot to stop at, and it's at the end of Section A, so you've been on the trail for 5 or 6 days. You're ready for a meal. They got Wi-Fi, laundry. They do a really good job there. And most importantly, and this is really good news for the class of 2016, the Softleys is open again, the famous hiker heaven. So Donna took a break last year, but she decided to reopen in 2016, and this is a great spot to stop at the end of Section D in California. She's got the operations up and running. I mean, it's run very well. Showers. She has cots out in the back for people, laundry. You can send your resupply box there. Pretty much everything a thru hiker needs when they come into town. And that's pretty much it. I'd like to open the floor if there's any questions. You guys have been relatively quiet, so either I'm boring you to death or there's no questions. I'm going back to the screen here, and I'm seeing there's some questions there. Crystal, you asked, what is the app called again? Which app are you referring to? If you can speak up. Okay, maybe we lost Crystal. So Rick, you have the PCTHYOH Crystal. So this isn't a smartphone app that was, I think it still is available actually, even though I haven't looked at it lately. But the key thing here is that it's no longer maintained. Unfortunately, the guy who created it, maintained it, passed away in 2014, and we don't think anyone's maintaining it. So use it at your own peril. We just want to let everyone know. Okay. And then Rick, you had a question. I've heard of the uranium-tainted water source. Is that real or myth? Actually, it is real. It's in Section G. So if we go, I'll open up the map and I'll show you. I think it's called Joshua Spring Tree. So in Section G, it's the first water source. It's right here at mile, 664B, Joshua Tree Spring. I've never been there myself, but I've seen the sign that says supposedly it's tainted with uranium. But I know many people who have gone there and drank from it and never had any issues. So, it's kind of a yes and a no answer to your question. They do have a sign, but I've never heard of anyone actually having any issues with it. But I have heard that bears can be pretty pesky there. They're not going to attack you, but they will go looking for your food. So Crystal, I'm sorry, it sounds like there's no sound, but everything seems to be going well from my end. Michael, any guess whether Golden Oak Spring will have water through April? A great question, Michael. Golden Oak Spring last year was off and on, but until the trail crew went up there and they fixed it, it seems like it's running pretty well. So if we go to the water report, if we go to the Acton to Cottonwood Pass, we can go down and look at Golden Oak Spring, so 583 years. So actually, yeah, so Tamala sent me an update on March 1st saying it's flowing about 1 liter per 3 minutes. So it's flowing, but, it's there, so that's good news. But it's one of those things, like when you leave Tehachapi, you're going to download the water report, and you're going to hit Golden Oak Spring probably the next day. For the really strong hikers, you could probably hit it the same day you leave. But you have a good up coming out of Tehachapi. It's like 1,500 to 2,000 feet. But, just check the water report and make your best case guesstimate. And always assume the worst. Okay, that's the last question I saw there. Feel free to ask questions on, audio too. You don't have to ask just on the meeting burner here. But that's pretty much what I had to show you guys. I'll leave it open for questions, but it doesn't seem like there's any more. So I will go ahead and end this call, end the recording, and I will upload this to the PCT Water website and also put it up on YouTube so you guys can have access to it. So, and you can also download. Oh, no problem at all. You can also download the presentation from the water report website. If you go to the home page here, about halfway down, click on this water report link, and you could download it. You can watch it and download it here. Okay, well, thanks, everyone. Happy hiking and good luck.
Hello?
Thank you.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna stay on the line here because there appears to be some more questions. Megan says, "What is the average temperature in the first couple hundred miles?" I'm hearing an echo, so can everyone please mute their phones? Okay, perfect. Thank you. That fixed it. Megan, it can really vary. What a lot of people don't realize, and I didn't realize this until I hiked it, you're up pretty high a lot of times in the first couple hundred miles, especially on Mount San Jacinto. You're close to 10,000 feet. So it really depends on where you're at. Up there, it can get pretty nippy at times, but down in the valleys, like the Cabazon Pass area, it can easily go above 100 degrees. The San Felipe Hills in Section A, just where the Third Gate water cache is, to me, that's always been the hottest part of the trail, but it also depends on the weather. So it's kind of all over the place, but a good idea is to carry like a Go Light umbrella. That's what I did, and if it got too hot in the middle of the day sometimes to hike because it's so exposed, I just sat down, got under my umbrella, and took a nap. See, Brian, you have a question. You had mentioned that Lake Moreno was the first reliable water source. Hauser Canyon is not reliable. That is correct. It's not a very big creek. I've only been there twice. In 2012, it was barely running, but we had a very wet April in 2012. In 2014, it was bone dry. And last year, when I was getting a lot of updates from hikers on the trail, I think it was dry the entire year. So I think it's fair to say, unless we have a very wet April or it's raining a lot when you start, Hauser Canyon will be dry. Rick, you asked, do you consolidate the daily reports and share them daily? Not sure what you mean by consolidate, but what Halfmile and I do is we look at the emails, voice messages and text multiple times a day during peak hiking season, and that's pretty much from April through November. And we take that information and we upload it onto the report. So you're getting the most recent information, but it's only as good as the hikers that are sending it to us and how frequently they send them to us. So it's really important for you guys to send us that data. Okay, Crystal, looks like you have a question. When we send a text to the number, do we get a file back? No, not a file, but we usually reply and say thank you. The only way to get a file for the water report is to go to the website and download it. And there's many PDF readers, smartphone apps that you can download. I think that's the best way to do it that way, and it also caches it. So as soon as you get cell coverage, you just open it up, you cache it, you turn your phone back into airplane mode, and your phone can last for a really long time in airplane mode, at least for iPhones. I hiked with an iPhone 5S in 2014, and man, that thing will last for a while if you just keep it in airplane mode. Okay, any other questions? I guess not. I see a lot of thank yous, and hey, no problem, guys. This is fun for me, and I love living vicariously through you guys on the trail. So please send updates as frequently as you can. And if you have any questions, feel free to friend me on Facebook. My name is Matt Parker. So search for Matt Parker, DoubleTap, and you'll find me. And I'll be happy to help wherever I can. All right, take care, everyone. I'm going to end the call now.